The Roberts family was never short of noise. Loud voices, clattering dishes, and constant bickering were the daily soundtrack of their home. Every dinner table conversation turned into an argument, every decision was a debate, and every holiday was a drama. There was Dad, George, who believed everything should be done his way, whether it was the right way or not. Then there was Mom, Karen, who would try to fix things with her suggestions, only for George to dismiss them immediately. Their oldest son, Ryan, was a perfectionist who argued with everyone because they couldn't meet his standards. Ellie, their teenage daughter, thought everything was a joke, especially when it came to serious family matters. And then there was little Sophie, the youngest, the quiet observer who seemed to stay out of the chaos, or so everyone thought. The arguments in the Roberts household were legendary. One time, it took an hour to decide where to have dinner, and even then, no one was happy. Ryan wanted Italian food, George wanted burgers, Ellie was craving sushi, and Karen just wanted something simple. Sophie, as usual, stayed quiet, and when everyone finally settled on a pizza place, she was too tired of the drama to care. "Sophie, can you help me set the table?" Karen asked one evening, while the family squabbled in the living room over vacation plans. Sophie nodded quietly, setting the plates with precision, and yet, no one ever seemed to notice her calm presence. As usual, the spotlight was on everyone else, the louder ones, the ones who argued. Sophie never had a say. She was always looked down upon, dismissed as the baby of the family, someone too young to understand anything important. Weeks went by, and the usual family chaos continued, until one fateful evening when a letter arrived at their doorstep. It was from Grandma Roberts, the matriarch of the family who had passed away a few months ago. The letter, written in her elegant script, addressed the family in the usual manner. "Dear family," the letter began, "I have one final wish to share with you. This will be my last will and testament, and it comes with a surprise for you all." The family gathered around the table. George, Karen, Ryan, and Ellie began discussing what they thought the letter would say, as they usually did with everything. "She probably left me something big," Ryan said confidently. "I was always her favorite." "Oh, please, Ryan," Ellie scoffed. "She always said I was her most independent grandchild. It's probably something really valuable for me." George smiled, brushing a hand through his hair. "You all think too much. I'm sure she left me the house. I was the one who always took care of her." Karen, feeling a little left out, chimed in. "I'm sure it'll be something meaningful, something that we can all enjoy. After all, I've done so much for this family." Everyone fell quiet when they reached the final paragraph of the letter. "To my granddaughter, Sophie Roberts, I leave everything I've worked for. You have always been the quiet one, observing the chaos, but I see in you the calm and wisdom that our family so desperately needs. I believe you will carry on my legacy with grace, and it's time for you to shine." The room went still. Sophie blinked, barely able to comprehend what she was reading. Her family stared at her, their jaws dropped. "Wait a minute," Ryan exclaimed. "Grandma left her everything, but she's just the youngest. She doesn't even care about any of this stuff." George stood up, his face red. "This doesn't make sense. I should have inherited it all. I took care of your grandmother for years, me, not her." Karen, equally shocked, shook her head. "But she's too young. How can we trust her with all of this? She barely even speaks up." Ellie, surprisingly, didn't argue this time. She looked at Sophie, her eyes wide in disbelief. Sophie stood there, holding the letter tightly, feeling every eye on her. But for the first time, the chaos was quieter than usual. She hadn't asked for any of this. And she wasn't even sure what to do with the inheritance, let alone the responsibility. But at that moment, something inside her shifted. Maybe this was her chance. Maybe it was time to step out of the shadows. "Grandma always believed in me," Sophie said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow it commanded attention. "I may be quiet, but I'm not incapable. I will make sure this family learns how to work together." The family was stunned. For the first time, Sophie spoke with a sense of confidence that no one had ever expected from her. Ryan, George, and Karen were speechless. Sophie didn't wait for their approval. She walked out of the room with the letter still in her hands, feeling a strange sense of pride, but also responsibility. She wasn't just the little girl they'd all dismissed. She was the one with the wisdom to bring peace, and now the family had no choice but to listen. Over the following weeks, the family slowly started to notice the change. Sophie, as the new heir, wasn't afraid to make decisions, no longer letting the arguments go on and on. She carefully planned family vacations, set rules for the household, and even managed to bring George and Karen together to talk things through without fighting. Slowly, the family started to realize that maybe Sophie, the quiet one, had been the key to their happiness all along. The family that had once been torn apart by noise and chaos began to find balance, and they had Sophie to thank for that. She wasn't just the youngest anymore. She was the one who had the calm, the wisdom, and the courage to lead them into a new chapter.